Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the movie Battleground. My name is Aaron Knoll, and we are back here once again with our Summer Invitational Tournament for the second to last match. We have one match left to go before the finals, and tonight we have the other side of the bracket. We have two great competitors squaring up to face the winner of our match from last week. Now, those of you who are watching, I'm not going to spoil the winner prior to the end of the match, but do be aware that in the post interview, the winner of last week's match will be spoiled. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. But it was between Alec Miller and Amadou Moses, and it was a really great match. But tonight we have Jeremy the Atom Adams taking on the Virtuoso Will Cohen, two guys who have come into this. Obviously, Jeremy is a veteran of the league. I've sung about as many praises of Jeremy as I can. But he is back on the win train after a couple of tough losses there, taking down somebody who beat him previously. Will, on the other hand, has strung together a couple of wins before and in this tournament to put himself at a 3-1 record, and very early on taking advantage of this tournament to get to a potential number one contenders match. So it is an interesting path for both of these guys, two guys with a lot of varying experience, both looking for the same prize. So I'm going to stop vamping and get to the competitors instead. Introducing first, coming in with a record of 4 wins, 2 defeats, and 2 knockouts, he is Jeremy the Atom Adams. Jeremy, welcome back once again, sir. As we said, I know you took those 2 losses back-to-back tough, but you came in last week prepared, ready to go, last time with a great victory. How are you feeling coming into tonight?
I tend to always kind of feel nervous before the matches. You never quite know how these things are going to go. You try to make your arguments and do the best that you can, but it's not as finite as participating in something like trivia. And I know, obviously, with 3 wins, Will knows what he's doing. So I just got to try to conquer my nerves and do the best that I can, as always. But yeah, getting that last victory definitely at least gives me a little more confidence going in today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And as I said, we've had a lot of conversations over the years, so I feel like there's not much more I can say to you. But this is the second time that you've reached this point in a tournament just since the relaunch. Obviously, last year that first loss came against Medee at about this point in the tournament. So does it mean even more to you to potentially go for the win tonight and make it to a final, or do you just have to force yourself to not think about it in that manner?
Yeah, I'm not thinking about it too much. I'm more thinking about that, I don't want to have 3 losses on my record. That just doesn't feel good. So that's kind of more, I'm looking at that bottom line. But, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about the fact that there is a tournament going on and there's spots to go up the ladder as well. But I haven't, let myself dwell on that too much.
Absolutely, man. Well, it's great to have you back once again. I'm going to sit you in the back for the moment and introduce your opponent. Coming in with a record of 3 wins, 1 defeat, he is the Virtuoso, Will Cohen. Will, welcome back, sir. Again, last match you won against Kelvin. It was a very solid round of debate from you with a great win. How does that make you feel coming into tonight?
It does make me feel a little confident. I do have the 1 loss, and the 1 loss was to also a veteran player whose record just happened to reset. And so facing me, he was 1-0 technically, and I was 1-0 at that point as well. So that was a hard one. And then I had the hard fight with Tyler. And so I'm not saying Kelvin was a light opponent by any stretch of the imagination, but now I'm facing another veteran player who has 2 knockouts on his record. I don't have any knockouts on my record. So is it a little nerve-wracking? Of course it is. Unlike some of my other matches, though, I actually feel pretty confident in my answers this time. So obviously it's not always going to be up to me. It's always going to be up to the judges as well. So I'm just going to have to do my damnedest to prove to the judges I'm right, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go back to that point of, this is the second veteran player you've played. We have seen a bit of a split, at least in the first year. You've had a lot of newer players that have done really, really well, but it seems like in that first go around, every time they reach that veteran player, it doesn't end in a win for them. And now we're getting, again, a chance to see newer players kind of build themselves up. Obviously, we have the upcoming title match between Henry Sanchez and Chad Webb, who is the first of this new class to make it to a title match. Do you feel that this is your chance to kind of hop on that trend, or are you, again, kind of similar to Jeremy, do you have to force yourself to not make it bigger than what it is?
Right now, I'll think about that later at this point. Because right now I'm in a very unique position with not only this, but then the tournament coming up as well. So whether or not I make my run here, and if I'm not able to succeed here, I have another chance later on in the tournament. But right now I'm just really taking every match one at a time. And this is one of the reasons why I'm really glad I don't know who the next person is, so I don't have to plan ahead. As soon as I found out that I was possibly going to either be facing Jeremy or Mehdi, I was already trying to be at the top of my game, trying to figure out like what I can give them as strengths, what I can start tightening up in my arguments and everything like that. And then I got Jeremy, which I've seen him debate. He is he's a force to be reckoned with. So I can't focus on anything else right now. I have to focus on my opponent right now.
Fair enough. Well, let's bring the opponent in, guys. Let's go ahead and get this underway. Movie Battleground is a game that is a best of 5 rounds. It is the first to 3 points wins the match. Each round of debate is going to be worth 1 point. If a competitor does happen to get 3 points in a row tonight, that will be a victory by knockout. If at the end of all of this, it is a 2-2 tie, that means we will go to sudden death in the blind round. However, we will worry about that when we get there. We're going to take the same mindset our competitors have. In terms of these first 4 questions of debate, the competitors have been given the questions ahead of time. They've had a chance to prep their answers, prep their arguments. They will each get 60 seconds to open the argument. That will be followed by 2 more minutes of them getting a chance to speak alone, to kind of expand their points of view. Then we'll have a 4-minute open discussion round where they get to respectfully, of course, trade blows back and forth and try and get some points in there. And then finally, a 60-second closing argument to surmise their arguments and finalize everything. Following that, we do have 3 judges backstage in the form of Chris Diaz, Brandon Cohen, and Chadwick Webb. They will join us on screen. And based off what the competitor said in the round, they will make their deliberation for the round. With that said, you guys have any questions for me? Are we ready to go?
Yep.
Jeremy, let's have a great game, man.
Good luck.
You too, man.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. And we are going to start by talking about somebody who has had a heck of a last couple of years, man. For what many years people could have said was, some kind of disappearance. Brad Pitt has had a good couple of last years. Obviously, a couple of years ago, he won Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He won the Oscar for that film. And after taking a little bit of time off, he's come back big this year. He had a very memorable cameo in The Lost City. He also just had Bullet Train release into theaters to, we'll call it mostly a success. I don't know what that movie's budget was, but if it was any bigger than $100 million, it's probably not a success. But it was a fun ride. And speaking of fun rides, let's rail Brad Pitt. The question is, what is Brad Pitt's worst film of the 2010s? God damn, I just have to read a sentence, don't I? What is Brad Pitt's worst film of the 2010s? Between 2010 and 2019, he had a lot of great films. What's the worst, though? So behind the scenes, based on the seating of the tournament, Will, you were deemed the competitor who was going you were deemed the favorite. So you chose to go first on questions 2 and 4, which means, Jeremy, you are going to be going first on this question. So as I bring the timer in and get it ready to go for you guys, I do want to say a best of luck to both of you. Jeremy, your time starts when you begin speaking.
Yeah, when you look over the decade of the 2010s, Brad Pitt is somebody who, was pretty wise with the choices of films that he was in. He was in movies like Moneyball. This is a guy who picks a good project, picks a good director. But sometimes, when you get married and you're in a relationship and you're both artists, sometimes you can make less than wise decisions. And that happened in 2015 when Brad Pitt decided to star with his wife, Angelina Jolie, in a movie called By the Sea, which, I just have to say is basically a vanity project for Angelina. She wrote and directed the film. The film was made in Malta, near Greece, basically while they were on honeymoon. And it's a film about a married couple in the 1960s. It basically kind of came out. It had a very limited release. It landed with a thud, making about $540,000 domestically. It was pretty savage by critics with about a 35% Rotten Tomatoes score, and it was a real bummer for Brad.
All right. Will, back over to you when ready.
When I think of the worst film of anyone, I always look at what they were, I always look at if they were attempting something that absolutely failed. And so for me, that film is 2019's Ad Astra. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. Wait, the one that has an 83% critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes? Yeah, lots of films have great Rotten Tomatoes scores that wind up being really, really trash after time goes by. Wait, isn't that the one that has $135 million box office? Yeah, lots of films have huge box offices, even bigger than that one. Those are still pieces of shit. It doesn't matter what the box office is. It doesn't matter what the Rotten Tomatoes score is. What matters is the fact that this film is a big introspective sci-fi film that throws action in there for no reason. It tries to be 2001, it tries to be Interstellar, and it just absolutely falls on its face. It manages to fail to launch on all fronts.
And time. All right, so we have By the Sea and Ad Astra. Jeremy, I'll go back to you. 2 minutes on the clock.
So just to kind of get into more about what By the Sea is, basically this is a movie that Angelina Jolie wrote at a point in her life when she was together with Brad. They've been together for a little while, and she had the inspiration that they were going to make a film together. And she was going through the tragedy of having lost her mom. I think she was dealing with some grief, and she kind of wanted to channel that into a script. And that, certain artists, when they're going through things in their life, they can make a great film. I think one that it comes to mind is Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, where if you're somebody who has been grieving in your life and you watch that film, I think you can really feel that. It really connects and it makes for a great film. But sometimes it thuds, and that's what happened here in By the Sea. Basically, this is a very it's an over 2 hour long movie that's very inert. Basically, it's like an art movie. It's based on films from the 60s and 70s, sort of like European type films. It's about a husband and wife that Brad Pitt's character is a writer. Angelina Jolie's character was a former dancer. They're very sad. We see them in a car driving into Malta. They're sad. They're kind of quiet for a long time. They go into a hotel. They check in. They're very sad. There's very little going on. It's a very inert movie. Slowly, as it goes on, there's a younger couple that seems much happier, newlyweds in the room. They look at them through this room, and a little bit of drama kind of goes on. But these people are sad, and she's keeping us in a mystery as to why they are sad. And then ultimately, they kind of get involved with the other couple. Things go bad. And then at the end, we're revealed why Angelina Jolie's character is sad. But it doesn't really play. There's the dialogue in the movie is very basic. It's very weak. There's a part where Brad Pitt sees Angelina Jolie's character like in the other room with the younger man, and they're playing cards and they're flirting, and he yells at her later, "Did you like playing cards? You enjoyed playing cards?" It's just embarrassing for Brad. He isn't given anything to work with script-wise or directing-wise. It's just, it's a really hard movie to watch. It never should have been 2 hours, and it doesn't play.
All right. Will, back over to you. 2 minutes on the clock when ready.
It's interesting that both of these films were chosen for this topic because both films actually deal with loss. Brad Pitt in Ad Astra is dealing with the loss of his father, who is trying to find his way back to his father. And By the Sea is actually about the loss of this couple who not only realize that they had a miscarriage, but now Angelina Jolie's character can no longer have a baby. What differs from this, and what actually, what makes Ad Astra the vastly worse film, is that Brad Pitt's character's journey to get to his father is extremely destructive. He breaks the law multiple times. He breaks rank multiple times. And the final stretch, he kills his entire crew because he dared to do something against orders. He is a selfish human being. He is not, he is the person that we're supposed to root for this entire time. He is wooden half the times, and then when he's not wooden, he is just, he is extremely arrogant. He is extremely selfish, and that's not the person you want to root for. Where By the Sea differs in this regard. It's a very grounded, very quiet film. Yeah, it might seem inert, but if you are actually looking at the emotion doesn't always it's not always bombastic. It sometimes is quiet, and sometimes it is a slow boil. And By the Sea is an absolute slow boil. It's a mystery to know what happened, and then when the final reveal happens, it does hit pretty hard. Yes, the dialogue is quiet, but grief is often quiet. We can't, sometimes we can't always be angry. We can't always be overly emotional. Sometimes it's just quiet and meditative, and that's what By the Sea is. It takes grief and makes it a meditation. Whereas Ad Astra tries to be bombastic, tries to put in space pirates and carnivorous monkeys while trying to tell a story of grief, and it just doesn't work.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. As always, a general reminder to the competitors to be respectful of each other. Obviously, get your points in, but also don't hog the time on the other. That said, 4 minutes starts when the first competitor speaks.
What I was kind of saying, Will, is that the dialogue is so weak in By the Sea, and it's so inert that the mystery of what's wrong with them, by the time you get to it 90 minutes into the film, you really don't care. The younger couple, one of the actors is Melanie Laurent, are more interesting in this film than Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. And they're just sad. We don't know why. We really don't care. The movie isn't well written enough or interesting enough. It's just kind of like I said, like a vanity piece to watch these two actors on screen. And when you get the reveal of the fact that they can't have kids, it really isn't. You don't really care it that much. It isn't that much of a bombshell, and the movie just kind of like, okay, they deal with it and it moves on. I think of a movie like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, which is a movie that was actually made in the 60s. If that's a couple that is screwed up in that film and is taking it out on a younger couple, and it's so much more involving and so much hits you so much harder, and it also deals with child loss and these themes. By the Sea is such a pale imitation. And Ad Astra, I just got to say, this is about the people that are trying to save the universe, basically. Tommy Lee Jones's character has done something puts everyone in the universe at risk, and Brad Pitt's character has to do what he has to do to get there. And it's entertaining and interesting to watch these different action scenes as he's getting there. But Brad Pitt's character, there's such like a resolve and a quietness in him that there's an emotion in him while he's having to make all these choices to save the world, that when he does get to Tommy Lee Jones at the end, I think it hits much harder than it did in By the Sea. And you're much more involved along the way. You're interested because there's great action scenes, the scene on the moon, as opposed to just sitting there and watching people wallow.
And I completely disagree. Ad Astra is just extremely slow from the very beginning. Slow so much it almost feels like you had paused the movie on accident. This movie just never really goes anywhere, to the point that when we finally get the first action sequence, it comes completely out of nowhere, and it's space pirates. It has nothing to do with the film at all. So it's just completely shoehorned in there. And then what do we get from there? We get a bunch of really lazy, sleepy dialogue about why he needs to go save his father, and yet he is told to stay put. What happens? Then we get to his space, all of a sudden there's an encounter with a feral space animal, which again comes out of nowhere. And then more dialogue, more just sleepiness, and then he kills his crew. So there's three action sequences in this over 2-hour film that was never seemingly meant to be an action film. If you look at the trailer, there's hardly any action in the trailer at all, because it was meant to be something like Interstellar, it was meant to be something like 2001, and they shoehorned all this action. Now with By the Sea, this film would have been perfect in the French New Wave, a New Wave era, where everything was more pensive, everything was more toned down, everything was more subtle. Yeah, the couple in the room is having more of engaging time, but that is the point. The point is that they are these newlyweds who are just absolutely in love with each other and just all over each other. And these, the married couple who's been together so long they can't even remember when their anniversary is, they are fascinated by this. They want, they want to see why they are happy. And then they start, playing these little head games with each other. That is extremely interesting. But then we find out why they're playing the head games with each other. And that is just absolutely fascinating to watch. And then we
All
see
of that you
resolved.
just said is really interesting in a good movie, like an actual French New Wave movie, or Who is Afraid of Virginia Woolf. But in this movie, the dialogue is weak. It's subpar.
The dialogue is far from weak.
It's very weak. They're just like the scene where he says hurt me," and he's like grabbing her hands to hurt him. That's like
electrifying. That's an electrifying scene.
And time. All right, we have 1 minute closing left on the round. Jeremy, you are back up first. You have 1 minute left.
Right. So the emotional high point of the scene is Brad Pitt saying "hurt me" and having her hit him with his hand. That's like the only time that the movie kind of comes to life, and even that is, there's no real dialogue, there's no real interest there. And going back to Ad Astra, like, yes, it is people in space going on this journey, thinking about what they have to do, thinking about the implication of everything, and then these really cool, interesting action scenes happen. It's like 2001. It's like Interstellar, where we're on a journey, we're waiting, and then things happen. And everything that Brad Pitt does in this movie, he has to do, and he ultimately gets to the moment where he finds his father, and he actually, when he tells his father that he loves him, even though his father has done these horrible things, it doesn't care about him. It really lands. We've gone on this journey. We've seen Brad Pitt be this guy who's so contemplative and knows what he has to do, and he's been waiting for this moment where he has to say this to his father. And the performance that he gives in that moment really lands, and it makes all the action and interest of this movie really land, and that's why critics and everyone liked it. And it's not inert like By the Sea.
All right, and then Will, you have the final minute of the round when you're ready to go.
Yeah, for a movie that everyone's, that Jeremy claims that everyone, really liked, no one really talks about this film anymore. No one talks about Ad Astra anymore. So I really don't see what everyone's talking about. Unlike Interstellar, unlike 2001, when action scenes happen, they make sense with the plot. They are driving the plot forward. In Ad Astra, they're only to keep the audience awake. They're just loud, they're obnoxious, they're just so out of left field. You're just sitting there wondering afterwards, why was that even there? Could we have just removed that and then have it be a better movie? The answer is possibly, but you're still left with clunky dialogue. You're still left with a selfish character who at the end should be in jail for murdering his entire crew, but somehow is still walking the streets. At least with Beyond the Sea, or By the Sea, it's a quiet film. It's a grounded film about grief that you can actually sit with the characters and listen to them talk. The dialogue is very electrifying, and when there are emotional scenes, it is absolutely electrifying.
And time. All right, guys, a great opening round there. I'm going to go ahead and sit both of you in the back, and I will introduce our judges in here. So I have just a couple of small cleanups or quick facts. So in terms of money, one made much more money than the other, and I think we can argue both of these were failures. By the Sea had a worldwide box office of $3.3 million on a budget of about $10 million, so that was most definitely a failure. On paper, Ad Astra looks like it made money with $135.4 million worldwide box office. However, the movie cost nearly as much as $100 million on just production budget alone, so when you account for marketing budget being added in and theater intake being taken out, it also lost money at the box office. Between these two films, Ad Astra did win out with critics. It has an 83% like rating on Rotten Tomatoes with a 7.5 out of 10 average. However, audiences were not so fond of it. It has a 40% like rating on Rotten Tomatoes. By the Sea has a 35% critic rating with an average of 4.9 out of 10, and it has a 28% audience approval rating. By the Sea was in fact filmed on Brad Pitt and at the time Angelina Jolie Pitt's honeymoon. For people who don't know, obviously they were together for a very, very long time since filming Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but they were not married until 2014. They shot this film shortly after. And in terms of Angelina Jolie, this was the second film that Angelina Jolie made where she was the writer, producer, and director of it. She also wrote, directed, and produced In the Land of Blood and Honey, and she directed Unbroken in between. However, according to sources, This script was actually written potentially before In the Land of Blood and Honey, as was said in the argument, during a time when she would have lost her mother, and a lot of the filmmaking choices are inspired by things that her mother enjoyed, like 60s and 70s cinema. With that said, though, we're going to turn it over to the judges. Chris, I'll go to you first. As concise as you can hit it for me, who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Yeah, it was back and forth all the time, and everything was nothing. I think Will kind of convinced me to the end. He brought up the selfishness of Brad Pitt character, he brought up the action coming out of nowhere. He defended Brad Pitt a good amount, so he wanted to the end.
All right, so the first vote does go to Will. Brandon, I'll move down to you. First off, welcome, sir. For anyone watching, this is his first time with us as a judge. So I will now ask you, as concise as you can get it for me, who gets your vote, and what was the main point that sold you?
Yeah, I thought it was close. There was a couple points back and forth. I was just looking at which movie would I want to watch less. And the constant reference to Space Pirates made me obviously want to watch that more. But overall, I did end up going with Jeremy because Jeremy kept talking about the reason when you find out the reason why they were hurting each other, when you find out the reason why I just fell flat like a thud. And Will said, well, no, it's actually a big moment. But then he never told us what that big moment was because I never seen the movie. So for me, it just sounds boring with a bad ending. So I think if Will kind of brought up the ending more and what happened and how that emotionally affected the movie, I think I would have swayed back to Will.
All right, so it is a 1-1, which means, Chad, I'll go over to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main point that sold you?
Yeah, I'm actually on Brandon's wavelength here. I went with Jeremy. The reason being here is just because, I heard more. Like, they both compared their movie with other movies they think are much, much better. But I feel like Jeremy did a better job at explaining what those other movies did specifically better than the movie that he chose and why his movie, the stuff that they were trying to emulate from those other movies just didn't work here. And then I think him propping up Ad Astra and saying that meeting between Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones was so good that it just kind of like really made the movie. And I just don't think like the takedowns on it were compelling enough to sway me the other side. So yeah.
All right, so then first point will go to Jeremy. Judges, thank you guys so much. I'll go ahead and set you guys in the back and bring the competitors back in as we will move on to question number 2. And why don't we keep it in the ballpark? We just talked about Brad Pitt's having a great year. He was in The Lost City. He was in Bullet Train. Do you know who else was in those movies with him? Sandra Bullock, who apparently is deciding to star in films again. Good for her for having hits at the box office. So let's talk about Sandra Bullock. Although her 2010s, I think most people would agree with me, was not as great as Brad Pitt's. So let's be nicer to her. The question is, what is Sandra Bullock's most underrated film? And so with that, we are going to turn it over to our competitors here. Will, you are up first on this question, so I will give you the timer, and it will start ticking when you begin speaking, sir.
When it comes to Sandra Bullock films, they kind of feel a little polarizing. Either they're really good or they're pretty middling to, let's face it, some of them are really, really bad. And so when thinking about underrated rather, I really had to dig a little deeper into her catalog, but I think I found the film that really exemplifies what she could have done and what she now has done in her career, and that is 1995's The Net. The Net is is a cyber thriller that came out right when the internet was really just starting to become a thing in this country, and a lot of critics thought it was kind of fear-mongery towards this new technology a little bit, but in reality, a lot of what happens in the film kind of stays true and actually does happen to this very day, just on a bigger scale. And so it actually does feel like it's well ahead of its time. And that's the exact reason why I really want to prop up The Net here.
All right, that's going to be time. Jeremy, back over to you for your opening minute.
Yeah, the very first movie that popped into my head when this happened is a film that Sandra made in 2000, a while ago, and it's called 28 Days. And I think this is a movie that came right at a point in Sandra's career where she had done, a lot of romantic comedy type roles. She was really known for comedy. She was also known for, more action adventure films. But I think she was going to try to take her skills from comedy, try to start transitioning more into dramatic work. We would see her go on to be in films like Crash and Infamous, and later winning an Oscar for The Blind Side. And I think 28 Days is right at that point where we see her, and this is basically a film in which she plays a person who's in the press, whose life is very chaotic. She's in a unhealthy relationship with a guy. She's doing a lot of alcohol and drugs, and she ends up in rehab. And that's why the film's called 28 Days, because it takes place in rehab. And basically, this is a movie that has a lot of humor in it. Sandra's very funny in this film, but it also gets to the real stuff. It has some real dramatic heft. And I think it perfectly is that point in her career.
All right. So we have The Net versus 28 Days. Will, back over to you, sir, for 2 minutes when ready.
Aside from being completely ahead of its time in 1995, The Net is just a great thriller from start to finish. When we see Sandra Bullock's character, we get to delve into her character. She works from home. She's a hacker. She's a cyber expert. She's extremely smart, but she is ostensibly a loner who only really talks to people online, and occasionally her mother, who has Alzheimer's and doesn't really remember her half the times. This is just a great film, again, from start to finish. Very energetic, very entertaining. 28 Days, I feel, is very rated, we'll say, because this is a film that really suffers from identity crisis. It doesn't know whether it wants to be a comedy, doesn't know whether it wants to be a drama. The whole rehab aspect can be a little insulting at times, because one, Sandra Bullock's character is a writer, so so all of a sudden, oh, you just go to parties and drink. A character even says that to her face. Oh, you just go to parties and get wasted all the time. As a writer, I'm extremely insulted by that. That's a horrible stereotype. Two, it doesn't even follow its own rules. She steals a limo and crashes it into a house while she's just completely inebriated. First, the theft and the damage of the house would have landed her in jail. But because she's famous, she's in rehab. That doesn't really make sense. Second, she leaves rehab, gets wasted, and comes back, and they just essentially welcome her back. Oh, well, we're wagging our finger at you, but you can still come back. It's fine. You learned your lesson. No, you can't do that in rehab. If you do that in rehab, your ass is kicked out, especially if this is court mandated. 28 Days can't even follow its own rules, whereas The Net is a great thriller from start to finish, and it's highly, highly underrated.
And time. All right, Jeremy, back over to you, 2 minutes.
Well, 28 Days, basically, this is a movie that it based Sandra Bullock basically, at the beginning of the movie. I don't think that the movie is saying that she's drinks and is crazy because she's a writer. As we go on in the movie, we get backstories and explanation as to why she drinks and has these issues. And she had a backstory with her mom who was a drug user and alcoholic, and she actually died while her two daughters were in the house. And then at the beginning of the film, Sandra's at her sister's wedding, which is a trigger for her because her sister and her mother and all this stuff going on. The beat where she slams the limit of the house and everything, that's really kind of over the top, kind of more comedic stuff. And it kind of like, oh, there's Sandra Bullock, she's being funny, she's doing the slapsticky comedy stuff. She lands in a cake. We're not supposed to take it that seriously. And it kind of eases into this comedic tone. But once we get into the rehab, it starts, really getting in. We get the different characters that are in there. It has an amazing cast. Her counselor is Steve Buscemi, who's wonderful in the movie. Viggo Mortensen's in the film as a patient who's a baseball player. You have actors like Margot Martindale, Dominic West, Marianne Jean-Baptiste, Ellen Tudyk, Michael Malley. They're all great. And it's not like a serious, realistic kind of a movie. It's more of a comedic slice of life. But I think why this movie holds up so well and why critics didn't really get it at the time is it's not about rehab is this really serious, crazy thing, and there's gonna be a moment of salvation. It's no, some people, they're normal people. They're just like you and me. They've made mistakes in their life, and then they just come to that moment. And the 28 days is where this happens, where they have to make that decision. Do I want to get better? Do I want to seek help? And that's really all that happens in this movie. It's kind of low key. And Sandra Bullock plays that because she is funny. There's some comedic stuff in the movie that's really funny, but it's more down to earth about this character and what she's going through. And it really gets you by the end with that terrific cast.
All right. We are going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
Okay, so you're being really inconsistent with your arguments here, because first you're saying that she's down to earth and she's just a sympathetic character, but then she's playing, but then all of a sudden these dramatic moments are played for laughs. First of all, the cake, being tripped into and the limo, neither of those are played for laughs at all. Or if they are played for laughs, then I don't know who's laughing at them. They are huge dramatic moments, and then all of a sudden they're shoehorned in later on with comedy, which doesn't make any sense at all.
I think that her landing on the cake and then, I'm going to get you a new cake and everything. There is some comedic timing there. It is something that's a little slapsticky. No, it's not like, a Jim Carrey comedy, but there is some comedic stuff there that just kind of like,
but they're not.
It puts a lightness to her character. But what I was talking about with the comedy throughout the film is when she gets into rehab, you get to know these different characters. There's one thing, one of the characters is obsessed with a soap opera called Santa Cruz, and every time they watch this show, this fake soap, it's very funny, but it's also very true, because those are the kind of things when you're in recovery and you're trying to, keep your mind occupied. People will watch soap operas and get into that, and it's kind of those low-key truths about life that go with the comedy and also with some of the drama. But the movie is never super serious. It never tries to be tragic. It's more about
it absolutely. I'm going to stop you right there, because it absolutely does try and be dramatic. It really does. And when it tries to be dramatic, it swings for the wrong fences altogether, because yes, we later on down the line find out why, she is what she is. But here's what really is aggravating about the film. And again, this film does not follow its own rules. The one person who knows about her upbringing, her sister, is the one who delivers the line I brought up earlier, where she says, "Oh, well, you're just a writer. You just get wasted and go to parties all the time." So she knows what her sister has gone through, and she doesn't care. And then all of a sudden later, that just resolves.
People say stuff when they're frustrated.
Great, wonderful. But but you keep talking about this comedy. Well, if these are things that are played for laughs, played for slapstick,
no.
it's falling flat on its face, just like Sandra.
Yeah, the stuff at the beginning. The stuff at the beginning is the weakest part of the movie for sure. It's just starting with that comedic tone, but once they get into rehab, the movie really kicks into gear. There's real humor, but there's also you care about these characters. It's a great cast of characters. Let me talk about the net here. Now, you keep saying that the net is a great thriller. It's really not. I mean, my movie, I told you the great cast that we have. Your movie, it has Sandra Bullock, Jeremy Northam, and Dennis Miller, and that's about it. There isn't much of a cast in this thing to really carry us through the movie, and it really I think Jeremy Northam is this guy who romances her, and then it gives away pretty early that he's a bad guy. I think that really kind of takes the steam out of the movie, and it's really, you talk about it, it's ahead of its time and all this stuff. It really is pretty ridiculous, the fact that there's like terrorist hackers, and they've hired like this suave hitman guy to work for them. It's pretty silly stuff, and I actually think that Sandra Bullock, where she really is well cast in 28 Days, I think she really fits into that character who's self-effacing. But in the net, I think that she's miscast because we don't really buy her as a loner type.
Okay, so what you're saying is that my cast, with ostensibly only like 3 main characters, can carry an entire movie, whereas your film has multiple characters and it falls on its face. Okay, that's a great argument.
Well, they keep you enjoying the film.
They don't keep you enjoying the film, because I want to know more about the characters that I'm not hearing about in 28 Days. Whereas we're on one central character, and that's an entire thrill ride from start to finish.
And time. All right. So we will go into the closing arguments. Will, you have 1 minute left on the clock when you're ready to go.
So I do feel that my time was rather monopolized in that 4-minute debate. So I'm going to try and wrap this up as much as I can. You have three. You do have three characters, but it's really you only care about two characters ostensibly through the entire film: Jeremy Northam's character, who's the villain, and Sandra Bullock, who is the hero. Yeah. Okay. So cyber terrorism isn't a thing. Yeah, cyber terrorism is a thing. It absolutely is a thing. And so that's why it's ahead of its time, especially it might not have been big in 1995, but it's definitely big now, therefore ahead of its time. Her identity gets stolen early on in the film, and that's a big plot point. Identities get stolen all the time now, ahead of its time. Jeremy focused so much on his film, he didn't have time to really rebut a lot of things about my film. Whereas 28 Days Later, I wanted to know more about Alan Tudyk's character. I didn't. I wanted to know more about the girl who liked the soap opera, but that's the only thing I really know about her. All these characters are introduced. I hardly know anything about them. 28 Days Later is played, tries to be funny, and it falls flat on its face every single time.
All right, and Jeremy, you have the final minute when ready.
What I was saying isn't that cyber terrorism isn't real and isn't a thing. I'm saying that the cyber terrorism that you see in the net is not credible. The way that they operate, the way that they hire assassins, it's pretty ridiculous. And, this film really, it isn't about the internet. It's actually more about like 80s technology with people hacking into systems and stuff like that. So even at the time that it came out, it was dated. So I don't really consider it ahead of its time. And the chases and things in the film are not that interesting. It's not that fun to watch. It's really not a great thriller. It's not that thrilling. And Sandra Bullock is really miscast because we just don't buy her as this person who has no social life and no personality, who's a hacker. I think she fits way better in roles like in 28 Days, where she's got a full inner life. She's struggling with a lot of stuff, but she copes with it with humor. And I think the fact that you want to know more about the characters in 28 Days, like Alan Tudyk, who's so funny in the film, is a good thing. You like these characters, you could see more of these characters. Another movie about them would be great. That's what makes it so underrated and so enjoyable.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and put you guys in the back and reintroduce our judges after that. So I have just a couple of quick cleanups here. So the biggest question that was worth researching is based on the realism of 28 Days. Now, 28 Days as a film is not based on any type of real story, so obviously in terms of realism, there's nothing directly that they are basing it off of. But in terms of the general concepts of her being sent to rehab in place of prison, and then her being able, or at least what I was gathering what was being said, was her kind of being able to leave and re-enter kind of willy-nilly a little bit. In terms of serving a sentence as an alternative to jail, that is absolutely 100% something that they will do for anybody. It's not just a famous person necessarily. It's actually a thing the court system will do. The relevance for it is that if you have been arrested for a non-violent drug-related crime, such as a DUI, you will not necessarily go to jail. You may be able to go to drug court following your arrest, where you may qualify for an addiction rehab program as an alternative to jail time. Now, I've not seen the movie, but I'm just going to assume they truncate a lot of those steps and kind of quickly get to the point. However, the gist of it is, yes, if you are found of a nonviolent crime, which if I'm remembering the plot of the film correctly, she doesn't injure anyone in the accident, she just does simply crash the car into a building, then it would go under a drug-related arrest, and she could go to rehab realistically to get clean. In terms of exiting and readmitting to rehab, according to medical professionals, you can leave rehab of your own volition, and you will absolutely be readmitted. The only time that somebody will not be allowed readmittance to a rehab is if they are removed by the program for any type of disorderly conduct or consumption of services on site. So if it's simply a thing of you choose to go against medical advice and leave early, you suffer a relapse and you would like to return, then you can absolutely do so. They won't stop you. Now, again, I've not seen the film personally. I don't know how the specifics of that portray, but since it was brought up, I did the research to figure out what relation that might be. That said, though, I am going to go to our judges. Brandon, you are up first. As concise as you can hit it for me. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
All right, so the name of the game is who can sell their movie better. And I think Jeremy just did a better job. I really think Will kind of shot himself in the foot a little bit. He spent all of his 2 minutes just attacking Jeremy's movie, but never really said. All I know about The Net is that it's thrilling and ahead of its time. So he didn't really do enough to sway me to what makes his movie so much better. I think he could have shot down the momentum in the back and forth round and swung it back his way, but he kept kind of giving into the conversation, and it just wasn't enough to sway me about why his movie is better. So I went with Jeremy.
All right, Chad, down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
This one was really, really tough. I was sitting here trying to figure out whose name to write on my board the whole time you were talking. But I went with Will this time. And the reason being is because they both did talk a lot about Jeremy's movie, and they were also both just trying to talk about like the qualities of their movie, not necessarily talking about underrated. I feel like Will did hit on that more by talking about how his was ahead of his time and people didn't really accept it when it came out. And then he gave me some reasons too about why it's still like relevant today, even though Jeremy did have a pretty good knock on that. I still think that Will just hit more on it's underrated, it's ahead of its time, and we're still seeing some of the stuff you see in that movie today. So yeah.
All right, and then Chris, I'll go to you for the third vote.
Yeah, same here. Well, they keep it nice and clean. You were saying. Same reason.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. With that said, I am going to drop you guys to the back, and we will go ahead and bring the competitors back on and move on to question number 3.
Hey, before you do, Jeremy, you're fucking awesome, man.
Oh, you're awesome too, buddy. Sorry for over talking you there. It wasn't intentional.
Well, we both have that problem, buddy. We'll do our best to moderate it. But good round, man.
You too, buddy.
Absolutely. You guys had a great round there, so we'll go ahead and move on. And I'm going to keep using the same setup here because you want to know what else was in Bullet Train? Not Star Trek. Not Star Trek. They did reference Thomas the Tank Engine more than you would think, but not Star Trek. So if you guys watched last week's match, without going too much into spoilers, you guys know that I gave those guys a question that was a very, very small sample size, just to kind of push them and see what they did. They only had 3 options to pick from. So I turned around just to keep it fair. It is the semifinals of a tournament, and I gave these guys a similar type question. So this question here is, what is the best entry of the Kelvin trilogy of Star Trek? Now, for those who don't know what the terminology means, that is the most recent J.J. Abrams directed and produced series from Star Trek, Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond. In my own personal estimation, I think all 3 films are good, and I think they're all very, very close to each other. But which one does come out on the top of the mountain? With that said, Jeremy, you will be up first this time around, so I will go ahead and give you the timer, and it will start ticking when you begin speaking.
Yeah, for me, this is a no-brainer. 2009 Star Trek, directed by J.J. Abrams, really brought the Star Trek franchise back into the fold. I think it's a brilliant movie. So many things about this film are great. Recasting, the famous original series characters with Chris Pine as Kirk, and Zachary Quinto as Spock, and my favorite, Carl Urban as Dr. Bones. It was such a joy to see them take on these roles. And there's so many things that they did in writing this film that are so ingenious, like the fact that right at the beginning, with what happens to the ship, the Kelvin, that creates this Kelvin timeline, it puts us in a new timeline, which separates it from the other Star Trek series and movies that we'd seen. And that's really kind of keeping with Star Trek, because there were a lot of different timelines and stuff in the series and in the other films. So it's a really ingenious movie. I think it has the best characterizations of the 3 films. I think it's the most enjoyable. It has the best villain, and it still just really hit it the most of the 3.
All right. We're going to go over to Will. 1 minute on the clock when ready.
So I do feel like the Kelvin trilogy really is underrated, against all the other beloved Star Trek films. Where I'm going to say the best entry is actually at the end of the Kelvin trilogy. I'm going with Star Trek Beyond. What Star Trek 09 did is that it took the majority of its runtime kind of reintroducing you to all these characters. William Shatner is no longer Kirk. It's now Chris Pine. Zachary Quinto is now Spock instead of Leonard Nimoy, and so on and so forth. And it gives, aside from Kirk, whose backstory is really fleshed out, and Spock's to a degree, all the other characters just kind of come in and are introduced. But what Star Trek Beyond did is that it already took everything from the groundwork and expanded into a wonderful story, a compelling story, and it was an original story, which was great.
And time. All right. So, for once in a Star Trek series, Khan does not win out. Spoiler for a film that's nearly 10 years old. Jeremy, I'm going to go down to you. You got 2 minutes when ready.
Star Trek 09, it starts with a bang with what I think is one of the best opening sequences, really, of any big summer movie, with Chris Hemsworth. Yes, Chris Hemsworth as George Kirk. He's the second officer on his ship, and then the villain played by Eric Bana comes back, and ultimately there's this really emotional, tragic ending to the opening sequence where George sacrifices himself as his son James Kirk is being born. It just really brings you into the feeling and the spirit of this new take on Star Trek, which is going to be more action filled. It is going to be more incident than a lot of the series that we're used to, but it has the heart. It has the trying to do the right thing, trying to make all the right choices, which is what Star Trek really is all about. It's about humanity improving and camaraderie and all of these things in the future. And as we see the crew getting put together, that really is what's going on with these characters as they Nero, the villain, comes back and is a threat to the galaxy, and they raise the stakes with the destruction of Vulcan and all this stuff that happens, like the highest stakes you can have, that make it a really exciting, interesting movie. And I actually disagree with Will, who kind of thinks that some of the characters get shorter shrifter because they're introducing anything. I think the fact that the crew is what the movie's about them coming together, really gets you into all these different characters. Zoe Saldana as Uhura, you just really feel her passion in this film, the relationship that she has with Spock, which is a new wrinkle in things. How funny Chekhov is in this film, R.I.P. to Anton Yelchin. The scene that we get, where there's an action scene that we get with Sulu, where kind of calls back to being a swordsman. Like, they're the focus of this movie. We really get to enjoy these characters. When you go into a movie like Star Trek Beyond, which has a plot with side characters and with characters being separated and stuff, I actually think that you get less of getting into these characters and getting to know them than you do here.
And time. All right, Will, back over to you.
So what 09 does is, like I said before, is reintroduce these characters. The one thing that really is a notch in the con tally, we'll say, ironically enough, is that we've already seen these characters in action. We've already seen them through, I don't know how many seasons of the original series, plus we have had 6 full movies, and then they were at the beginning of Generations. So we've seen these characters, we know these characters, we've sat time with them. So what we're really getting is, we're just getting like the reintroductions of them. Whereas by the time that we get to Star Trek Beyond, we have now had 2 films to sit with these characters. So yes, that's when you do bring in the side characters, and that's when you can actually expand on an original film and let these characters finally play. We've already introduced them in Star Trek 09, in Star Trek Into Darkness. We redid one of the classic cinema things, which honestly was a mistake. Thank God none of us actually chose that film. But with Star Trek Beyond, again, I'm going to harp on this. They did not rely on fan service. They did not rely on Leonard Nimoy as Spock, or Spock Prime as they call him sometimes, to give Scotty his own formula so they can get back to the ship. They don't kitschily have these little Deus Ex Machina moments to kind of push the movie forward. They allow the film to be organic. We've seen them together. Now let's see what they do apart and see how compelling they are when they're trying to get back together. That is the height of drama. That is exactly what drama should be. And that's exactly what Star Trek Beyond actually allows them to do. And then they have those moments together. They have comedy, they have drama, they have action, they have everything tied into a nice little bow.
And time. All right, Jeremy, or not Jeremy, this is the 4-minute open discussion. So I guess really either of you could speak. The timer will start when the first competitor talks.
Yeah, I just think that in the first film, getting to see these characters relate and learning things that we didn't know about them before, like about Bones and his wife and all the things, that's so exciting to watch them come together and to see them work together as a crew. I think when you get to Beyond and they're separated, I think that it actually loses a little momentum. And I think that your overall, plot that you have in Beyond is just kind of like, if you know Star Trek, it's kind of something you've seen before, that whereas in with Nero in the first film, I think that he's such a powerful villain. He's a Romulan. He's in pain with things that have happened to him, and it really lands and it really kind of grounds the movie. Whereas in your film, you have Idris Elba kind of covered in makeup, and the revelation about who he really is such kind of like a standard thing, and it doesn't really land for me. I just think everything is so cohesive, and it's such a powerful movie in the first film. Your movie is a little more segmented and a little more like second tier.
The reason why it might feel familiar is because it's a Star Trek film. Everything about these films have been very familiar because these are characters that we have known for ages. So if things might seem a little samey, it's because this is A, the third film in the franchise. B, this is a franchise that's been going on for a long time. So saying that it's samey, it should not be a knock in that category. Where my problem with 09 is, again, is not only is it just completely mired in fan service, we get to, it is interesting at times to get throwaway lines about Bones' wife, or to find out how we meet Scotty and all these other things in this unique timeline, but where it loses its where it just starts to lose it for me is that it just relies too heavily on the fan service. It relies on Spock Prime, helping Kirk get back to the ship. It helps. It's Spock Prime who tells us, who convinces him to do this in a certain way, or to trigger other Spock into losing his chair so he can become captain. So he's being led by Leonard Nimoy. This is all just mired in just fan service that doesn't really need to be. This is why J.J. Abrams just ruined Star Trek. Whereas with Star Trek Beyond, it's it's a brand new story. We haven't really seen these characters before, and yes, there are some callbacks to the previous films, but we've again, things are always more tension when a team gets split apart and then they get to interact with other characters. That's always extremely interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think that, when you're talking about fan service, you're talking about little things like I said, with Sulu doing the fencing. And if you're a Star Trek fan, you get that reference and stuff. But I think those things are thrown in there. But the fact that you're saying the movie is mired in that stuff and it takes away from the film is really not the case, because these characters are so well written. They're so fun. They're so interesting. The conversations that Kirk has with Bones are so funny. They can throw that stuff in there. They're regrounding us in this universe, but it doesn't take away from it. It's just like an extra garnish for people that know Star Trek. And I just think it's a better story than your story, because for example, let me bring up one thing. For example, Spock's dilemma in Star Trek 09 is the fact that his world is destroyed and he loses his mother. He goes through all of this really heavy stuff, and I don't think it's just a cop-out to have Spock Prime in there. I think it's a really interesting, fascinating thing to see those two characters relate. It's really kind of an ingenious Kelvin universe
really
thing.
Quick, it's a different.
Yeah.
What's different, it's one thing to have him there. It's another to make him further the plot for the movie, and that's where it really draws the line very clearly in the sand that this is just absolute
and
fan service.
All right, so we have 1 minute left on the round for each competitor. Jeremy, you are back up first, so time starts when you begin speaking, sir.
So yeah, Spock's storyline basically in Star Trek Beyond is he's considering leaving Starfleet and going to, be a Vulcan ambassador. That's just not as interesting as what he is going through in Star Trek '09. And I think that's kind of what I'm talking about with the two films. Like the Star Trek Beyond is it's just them on a mission. They've got this new character, J-Law, which takes over a lot of the plot. And I actually think, he thinks separating them makes it more tense. I think it takes away the tension because, they're doing these separate little missions and we're not seeing them, as a team working together, which is what Star Trek is at its best. And the reason that the Spock Prime thing is not just a fan service cop-out is because he created the incident that spins off this new universe and that drives the villain, Nero, and Nero is trying to get Spock. Like that Spock Prime is what he's trying to take him out. So it all ties into the plot and it sets up these new characters to go on their way. It's really kind of ingenious, and the movie is just better villain, better pacing. It's just an overall better film.
All right, and Will, back over to you. You have the final minute when you're ready.
So there have been many times in Star Trek where the team has been separated, undiscovered country, generations. Even some parts of Wrath of Khan, which is considered one of the best ones. Far From Home, or not Far From Home, Voyage Home. All the ones that are considered really great have often have story arcs where the characters are separated, and Star Trek Beyond is easily part of that. Yes, we have J-Law, and the interactions between J-Law and Kirk are just amazing. They're dramatic, they're funny, and it all leads to one of the best uses of Sabotage by Beastie Boys, which is a callback to the first one, but it's done even better here. It's such a raw moment. The action may not be all explosions, but we actually get better fight sequences in Beyond. It's all of the dramatic tension has now come to a head in this, and it all pays off in Star Trek Beyond.
And time. All right, guys, another excellent debate from the both of you. I'll go ahead and let you wait it out in the back as I bring our judges in. There isn't any real fact checking for this round. These guys were pretty much on it as far as I could tell. And I could spend hours in deep Star Trek lore wikis that I'd rather do other things with my time, quite frankly. So, Chad, we're going to go to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point as concise as you can hit for me?
Yeah, I went with Jeremy this time. Reason being, I heard a lot more from him. He said his movie starts off with a bang, epic sacrifice. The movie has heart. It takes like the characters you've seen before, kind of adds new things with them. You get like really cool like action scenes. Will had a really good thing where he was bringing up like fan service as a knock against it. I think Jeremy really countered that by saying that the fan service is more of a garnish and it doesn't really rely on that. And then I like some of Will's points about like the sabotage needle drop being really great. And stuff like that, but I really think that he was kind of like pushed up against the ropes a little bit with Jeremy saying that the character separation was really not great for Beyond, and the tension's better when they're all together. And I feel like Will did have to spend a little bit too much time trying to defend against that at the end, and I didn't hear too much about why Beyond is great, but yes, I went Jeremy.
All right. Chris, over to you. Who gets your vote and what sold you?
I kind of a Chad here. I went with Jeremy Rouse. John, Will just focused maybe a bit too much on, them being separated. Just see Jeremy brought up plenty of examples, and he managed to defend against the fan service criticism. Talk about the emotional arc with Spock, with Kirk. Jeff brought up more, and I see Will that was fixating on the separation, how original story did bring up more example. I feel like from Beyond to me a bit.
All right, judges, thank you guys so much. I'll go ahead and put you guys in the back, and we will go ahead and move on to question number 4. And question number 4, as the competitors already know, is a replay question. But more interestingly, it's a replay question one of our judges actually competed in, although I think all their potential personal bias will be taken out by the change made to the question. Question number 4 is, what is the best Emma Watson film of all time that is not a Harry Potter film? And this is because for those of you who watch as many matches as you can, I do appreciate those of you. You guys will know that the question was previously used during Alan Shepard versus Chad Webb. And in this match, despite the fact that it was open to all of her filmography, they both chose Harry Potter films. So we've brought the question back and eliminated those films because besides that, I mean, she has the entire 2010s of a career. And anyone remember The Tale of Despero? It's not a good movie and it wasn't chosen, but she was in it, so it could count. So we'll go ahead and get into it. But with that said, Will, you are back up first this time around, and I will give you the timer. And when you are ready, it will begin.
So what Aaron kind of alluded to is that Emma Watson's career outside of Harry Potter is pretty middling. And so I really had to kind of dig deep into her filmography to choose which I felt was the best one. And I really feel like I did. I chose The Circle. Why did I choose The Circle? Well, this is a very interesting film. I hate to use a phrase I used earlier, but I'm going to. This film really is ahead of its time. Even though this film only came out just a few years ago, this film was very heavily criticized for being overly critical of social media and being very paranoid of social media. But unfortunately, everything came true. The anti-privacy issues, the being online 24/7, all of these fears that we all have with social media are all present, and Emma Watson is just electrifying in the lead, as the lead character in this film.
All right, sorry about that, guys. Slight internet blip on my end there. Hopefully, didn't fuck with the timer too much for you.
No, I stopped right when it said 0.
Nah, you're good, man. All right, Jeremy, over to you, sir. You have an opening minute.
Okay. So my film is not only what I consider to be Emma Watson's best film that she's been in outside of Harry Potter, but one of my favorite films of probably the last 10 or 15 years. And that is Stephen Chbosky's Perks of Being a Wallflower, which is a film that he adapted from his own book, somewhat inspired by his own life growing up. It takes place in 1991, and it stars Logan Lerman as a character named Charlie, who's entering high school, and we get the feeling right away that he has something that he's struggling with, some mental health issues that make him kind of an outcast at school. And then he ends up meeting other characters who are kind of outcasts. Emma Watson plays Sam. Ezra Miller is her adoptive brother, Patrick, who's a character who's kind of an outsider because he's gay. And these three kind of form a bond. And this is just one of the most perceptive, moving, funny, and just really involving teen films really that I've ever seen.
All right. So we have The Circle versus Perks of Being a Wallflower. And we will go ahead and head back over to Will. 2 minutes on the clock, sir, when you're ready.
So right from the beginning, when we see Emma Watson's character in The Circle, she's working as a customer service representative in like this really horrible office. She has like this really horrible car. She's living this, below middle class lifestyle. Her parents are suffering because her dad has MS and is really suffering from that, and their insurance isn't covering for it. So as soon as she's able to get this prestigious job at The Circle, which is essentially this universe's Facebook or Instagram, she jumps at it and becomes a customer service star there, and starts rising through the ranks. But then she really starts to see what The Circle is all about. They start implementing these little things like, oh, we're going to have cameras everywhere around the world. But what are we going to use those cameras for? We're going to use those cameras essentially to influence politics. We're going to make people make people register to vote. If you have this, we're going to make sure that you do vote, because you can now vote through your Circle app. She's now praised for being online 24/7, or as they call it, being full transparency. And it's just creepy and damaging. And yet at the end of the film, she decides, even after screwing over her bosses, that she's going to be the change, and instantly becomes that same evil character. So what the Circle wants to do is it wants to make sure that you know what's going on in your world, and it wants to change things. With Perks of Being a Wallflower, Perks of Being a Wallflower, we've seen in other films. We've seen films like this. We've seen Charlie Bartlett, for instance, where it's another outsider who wants to fit in and all the foibles that go with that. But Charlie Bartlett at least had a lot of humor and a lot of very clever writing. I just didn't get that from Perks of Being a Wallflower.
All right, that's time. Jeremy, over to you.
I'm sorry. Is it my turn? Froze a little bit.
Yeah, you're good.
So just to talk about really quick about the Circle, Will is right that there's some really prescient themes and some interesting ideas about social media in that film. The beginning, where we're kind of introduced to Emma Watson's character, is she's kind of an interesting character and everything. But the fact that a movie has good themes and stuff doesn't make it a good movie. And this is quite frankly really a terrible movie. It's as kind of a thriller about this company. It doesn't work. Pretty early in the film, we know that this company's doing nefarious things. We're not really that invested in it. And then my film, it has this really great cast. Everybody in my film is spectacular. For even the small roles, like Paul Rudd as a teacher, Joan Cusack as a psychiatrist. The main cast. But in the Circle, we have, John Boyega as a cardboard character that really isn't well developed. We have Eller Coltrane from Boyhood, who he kind of, lucked into Boyhood, but then when he's tried to do other movies, he isn't really a very good actor. And even Tom Hanks in this film, his character isn't well written. He isn't really the tech mogul guy that we know in real life. The movie is just inert. It falls flat. You can say it's ahead of its time and all this stuff, but that's really just your way of saying it got a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes with the critics, and it bombed in the theaters. Has the Perks of a Wallflower been done before? In a sense, maybe yes, because we've seen teen films before, but in a sense, no, because these are very particular characters. They are very funny characters. There's some really hilarious and moving scenes, like there's a Truth or Dare sequence that is so cringy and so real and so fun, but it's such a powerful movie. Emma Watson's character, there's a moment, where she revealed, they asked her about her first kiss, and she reveals it was with an adult, and we realize she's been abused, and it hits in just the most real of ways. It's such a moving, powerful movie.
And time. All right, so we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
With Perks of Being a Wallflower, I really wanted to feel impacted by this movie, but there was nothing about this film that actually hit me. I think the only thing that really hit me is the fact that, Emma Watson's character was abused, but then so is Logan Lerman's character, and those are sad, but the writing and the way that these characters are written just did not make me invested in these characters at all. Whereas, by contrast with the Circle, I understand Emma Watson's character. I understand her plight, and that's perfect. I've seen Tom Hanks's tech mogul. It's he's a combination of Zuckerberg and Jobs, and it's just creepy to watch him just just ate both of them simultaneously. It's just so great to watch him just ooze that this, oh, I'm likable, but I'm doing these shady things. We've never seen Tom Hanks play a villain before, and it was electrifying to see. So I don't know why you're saying it's such a horrible film. Bringing up the Rotten Tomato score, there's been tons of great films that have stood the test of time. Citizen Kane was hated when it was first liked, and now it's beloved. So when you give a film time,
Can't give
it actually
15%.
enjoys it. Yeah, I can compare it in this scenario, and I just did.
No, I said it didn't get 15%. That some critics didn't like it, but yeah, just basically to say what I'm saying about The Circle. That like I said, there are some interesting themes in the movies, but that it isn't like the watershed film that you're making out to be, because there have been a lot of other movies and television that have dealt with these issues of what's going on with technology and social media. We have on TV Mr. Robot, which is if you really want to see this done well with interesting, fascinating characters, you can go to there. Even something funny on television like Silicon Valley gets really into the same issues and does it in a much better way.
So
like I'm saying, Tom Hanks, I don't think the script allows him to do much. You're saying he's electrifying. He's in a few scenes, and the writing
and he's
is
electrifying
in
in all those scenes.
No, it's clunky, and he isn't given the material to really do what he can do.
But think of this. When was the last time we ever saw Tom Hanks before play a bad guy? He hasn't. And the fact that when we delve into it more and more and more, we realize what kind of bad guy he is. And it's, he's just playing it. He's not playing it like a bad guy. He's playing it as close to the chest as he can. And it's great to watch. It's, subtle, but it's wonderful to watch. Now, if you're going to talk about, if you're going to try and knock my film, saying that there's other films that have done this before, I can easily say that Perks of a Wallflower, we have seen that countless times, and we have seen that done better. Again,
I don't think it has been done better.
It has absolutely been done better.
I think that Perks of Being a Wallflower. I'm an '80s guy. I love films like
I'm an '80s guy too.
Club and stuff. I think that this is better than The Breakfast Club. Let me give you one reason why. When I talked about By the Sea, I talked about how there's a big revelation that comes at the end of the film that they're hinting at the whole film, and it just thuds. But in this movie, there is something going on with Logan Lerman's character, some trauma that's happened to him. The one thing we know about him is that he had an aunt that he loved, and when you find out what she did to him, it's, for me and a lot of people who've read the book and love this film, it is devastating, the fact that happened to him.
But they foreshadow it throughout the entire film. They
foreshadow it, but it still lands really hard because Melanie Linsky It does. Melanie Linsky plays the aunt. She's a great actress. And who does he go to deal with this? He goes to Emma Watson's character, and they're so wonderful and well written, and there's such empathy in this film. It goes deeper beyond something like The Breakfast Club that didn't deal with such deep topics.
And time. All right, so we are going to go into the final minute of the round. Will, you are up first. Time starts and you begin speaking.
Right, so again, I didn't really get a lot of time to talk about my rebuts or anything like that, so I'm going to try and summarize this as best as I can. Logan Lerman is not a great character. He is a character with a lot of problems, but he uses his problems as an excuse to treat people like shit, and I don't like that. That's not a hero. That's an asshole. Ezra Miller's character. Yeah, Ezra Miller's in this film. Ugh, that already does not make this film hold up very well. And Ezra Miller's basically playing Ezra Miller, which is just creepy in its own right. But his character is just trying to be bombastic for all the wrong reasons, and then we try to make him a sympathetic character, but half the times he's being a big asshole too. They're taking all these stereotypes, the kid who has emotional issues, the slut, yes, they slut shame in this movie too, the gay kid, and they try and make them all stereotypes, whereas in The Circle, at least The Circle has a great thriller from start to finish, and it's ahead of its time.
And time. All right, Jeremy, back over to you for the final minute of the round.
The movie doesn't make these characters stereotypes and Perks of Being a Wallflower. They're the people in the school and the people in their lives stereotype them and try to put them into those categories, but they're not that. They're more than that. And by coming together and being with each other and outside of those strictures in school and stuff, they're able to open up and deal with trauma. And yeah, Logan Lerman's character, he's not an asshole. He makes some mistakes. He hurts a girl's feeling. He says some things that he doesn't mean in the film, but he's a kid and he's in pain, and by going through the therapeutic process that he goes through in this movie, we see him grow. And it's that the actually seeing the therapy, seeing the trauma that he's dealing with is so much deeper than something we get more surfacey in earlier films like The Breakfast Club. This takes that kind of material, elevates it, and Ezra Miller, he's great. He's Ezra Miller fine, but he's great in this movie, dealing with a boy who is in the closet, doesn't want to admit their relationship is so moving. And even some of the storylines, like with Logan Lerman's sister, is really funny and moving in this film. It's just a great film overall.
And time. All right, guys, another great round. I'll go ahead and put you both in the back and introduce our judges for the ruling. So just a couple of quick fact checks here. So as was mentioned, The Circle was overall, when you look at general reception, was not a resounding success. The movie did only cost $18 million to produce, despite having a decently stacked cast. However, it only turned in about $40.7 million at the box office, which means if it did make a profit, it was a very small one. The Circle critically received a 16% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes with a 4.2 out of 10 average rating. It received a 21% audience approval rating, so it didn't connect with most people at the time. When talking about what influenced The Perks of Being a Wallflower, I did attempt to find if there was an interview at any point where Stephen Chbosky, the writer of the book and director and writer of the film, gave any actual sightings or influences. He didn't. However, most would say that the film, in terms of reviews, it is a highly reviewed film, but there you can easily find websites that can compare it to other films of the day, so certainly it does fall within a genre of its own, or of a genre that exists, that's what I mean. And when comparing Citizen Kane to The Circle, while Citizen Kane did have controversy surrounding it, more specifically related to William Randolph Hearst and the influence that he not so willingly had on the film. In terms of actual reception, the movie was well received. It has become better received over time, although at that point in time as well, it was nominated for a total of 9 or 10, if I can count correctly, Academy Awards, winning 1 for Best Original Screenplay from Herman J. Mankiewicz and Orson Welles. So while it may have been more mixed and not as critically beloved as most people would give it now, it did certainly receive its praise at the time. That said, Chris, I'm going to go up to you. Who sold you, and what was the main selling point?
So this was an interesting debate. With more hot take ever heard. I read with Jeremy. I just thought he used example in his movie. He managed to hit on the circle a bunch of times. Just heard a lot about the circle and that one, especially by Logan Lerman about scenes specifically for the film, the big reveal, everything. And Jeremy put out really good argument. Really interesting debate for this one.
All right, which means, Brandon, I will go over to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
This was close. I do think there was some good back and forth. I do think, Jeremy did get a little more time, but I don't think Will did enough to kind of stop the momentum and stop that. He made some good points, though, saying that we've seen Perks of Being a Wallflower before, but then Jeremy hit back with what we've seen, Silicon Valley and other movies like that before. So I just think, again, when it comes to selling the movie and, the emotion and everything, and I just really think that Jeremy.
All right. Judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back because your winner by a final score of 3-1, Jeremy the Atom Adams, pulling out the big win and moving on to this final. Jeremy, first off, congratulations, sir. How are you feeling about the match?
I feel good. I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record coming after my last couple matches, but I really feel like Will did a tremendous job. He was so prepared and really, a couple, if not all of those questions really could have gone either way. It was just to the discretion of the judges. And I just give him all the credit in the world. And I'm glad that he's going to be in that other tournament coming up. And I definitely see him, ascending in this league. He still has a really good record, and I think he's going to maintain that. But yeah, it feels good, to not get to 3 losses, to climb up to 5 wins. It's good. But yeah, it was a tough match. When you get to this level of the game, they all are, and you do the best you can. But it's like I kind of revealed this backstage, but if you look over here, I've got Star Trek Beyond on my wall there. I love that movie. So, I kind of love all the Star Trek movies. So it's like you just have to make the best argument you can and put personal taste aside, and hope that it works out. And, today went in my favor, but I know I'm moving up in the tournament. It's not going to get any easier. And, I just got to, take a page out of Will's book and even be more prepared and really do everything that I can coming into these arguments. Cause, I know it's the pressure's only going to rise.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, your next match is certainly no easy task. So you will be playing in the tournament finals. And again, if you have not seen last week's match, this is your last opportunity to turn out before you get spoiled. But Jeremy, you will be taking on the winner of last week's match, Mr. Amaru Moses, who is coming into this with a record of 6-1. As we told him last week, outside of the champion Henry Sanchez, he has the most wins of any competitor in this league right now with 6. So it is a huge task in front of you, but I think that at this point, getting a couple of wins under your belt, plus all your experience, you're at a place where you could be ready for it. How do you feel going up against someone who I'm sure you're very familiar with?
Well, I'm a little mad at myself because I actually judged one of Amaru's matches, and it was actually my vote that gave him the win. So now I'm like, damn it! Why couldn't you have thrown the match? But no, I'm just kidding. It's an honor. Amaru is one of the people that I respect most in this community. He and I kind of worked together a little bit in the Full Metal League, doing some trivia stuff. We had some connections working with the Schmodown. So it's going to be, at least I hope, for my part, at least a friendly match between two people who respect each other. But yeah, he's really sharp. He's really good at this. I've faced some really tough opponents, and he's right, way up there on that level. Getting those 6 wins is something to marvel at. So, like I said before, I've got to, really be prepared this time. And I started doing like handwritten notes and stuff for this match, like so kind of stuff would be a little more in my head than in the past when I've been a little more extemporaneous. So I'm gonna like load up the notebook and do everything I can because I know I'm gonna have to.
Absolutely, man. Well, it was a great match from you and a good win tonight. And I look forward to having you back in that tournament final when it airs in a couple of weeks. So till then, I will see you as I will send you to the back and bring in your opponent. Will, it was a really good performance tonight, man. Multiple rounds there. The judges were split, even as they kind of threw out and discussed, even in rounds where it didn't appear split on screen, it still was. So I think you definitely took it as much as you could. But how are you feeling overall? Keeping in mind, we all know losses suck, but what's kind of the feeling in your mind right now?
Well, this is the first time I've ever experienced someone who managed to kind of like overpower and, for lack of a better term, monopolize the open debate. And so having to cram about essentially 4 minutes of points into 1 minute is never going to go in my favor in that. And I was surprised that I was able to get the Sandra Bullock point on that, because that was one of the rounds that definitely happened in. But all in all, part of it's that, part of it's the fact that I am in the midst of preparing for, I think, 3 or 4 other matches right now. So trying to cram all of those in, plus trying to study this and try and get my arguments. I wasn't as prepared as I probably could have been. And so, and like I've been meaning to rewatch Star Trek Beyond. It just didn't happen. I just ran out of time. So, part of it's definitely on me. But obviously, with this other tournament coming up, I can obviously, rebound off of it from there, and hopefully, things might go my way that way. I just obviously need to study more. I definitely need to be as assertive as I have been in previous matches, because I think that would have helped me in the open round. Maybe, try and get some of my points out there. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Overall, Jeremy is a great opponent. If you go back and watch my last match with Kevin, I hold no secrets that I was actually dreading this match, and it's because I know that Jeremy is a great debater. He's a veteran, and he gets all the praise for a reason. He is a beast, and all hats off to him.
Absolutely, man. Well, as we've kind of openly discussed this match, there's no reason to keep it a secret. Ahead of this match, every person was briefed that should they not make it to the final, at least those who were high enough up the ranking, they would have a slot in our upcoming end-of-year tournament in which, kind of bringing back the old days. 16 competitors will be competing for a chance at the title. You will be in that. I can also confirm to you that based on where you fall with that 3-2 record, as we have a lot of players who are at that +1 record deficit, you will come in the 11th seed. I'm not going to quite confirm who you'll be playing yet on air. That announcement will come on the Facebook page, but you will have that chance. So I do look forward to seeing you back then, sir, because I think coming in this year, following that big tournament at the start of the year, I think you've had 5 great matches, even if 2 of them are losses. And I know that in your own head, that hump is just getting over that veteran player. Once you do that, I think you'll be on your way. But till then, sir, I'll see you next time.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, and that is the end of another great matchup in this tournament. And yeah, Jeremy put up a great game, getting that win, moving on to the finals. Taking on Amaru Moses is certainly going to be a task for either of these two gentlemen. They are going to have a hard opponent, but whoever wins that final, it will certainly be worth it. For those of you who are intrigued by the concept of there's going to be a little bit of a wait. I'm going to put it on hold for just a little bit. So tune in September 25th. That is when the final will upload, and it will be Jeremy Adams taking on Amaru Moses. That said, if you want a big match in the meantime, tune in tomorrow as we have the next title match. One of our judges here tonight, Mr. Chad Webb, finds himself in the hot seat, taking on the current defending champion, Henry Sanchez, who is at a beast record of 7-1 with 2 knockouts. Can Chad represent all the rookies of Movie Battleground who came in just over a year ago and take the title from Henry? We shall see. But with all that said, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you to my great competitors, Jeremy Adams and Will Cohen, my judges behind the scenes, Chris Diaz, Brandon Cohen, and Chadwick Webb. If this is your first time watching, subscribe to the channel, rate the video, drop a comment, interact with the channel. It helps us grow. And it's fun to see. I do check comments if people comment, the one time every 10 matches it happens. So be that one. And join the Facebook pages. Keep in line. As I said, the announcements are coming on the Facebook page currently about who is in the tournament. Once every single day, there will be a drop for the next 16 days as to who is in the tournament. And tonight, you got one more, and Mr. Will Cohen. So thank you guys for watching. My name is Aaron Knoll. We will see you next time. Take care.